If you are here, you have had a mother. We haven't got to the point yet where we're just popped out of a machine somewhere and incubated and grow up. We all had mothers that bore us and hopefully raised us. And in Genesis chapter 3, verse 20, in Genesis chapter 3, verse 20, Adam, up until this time, had just called his wife, his mate. But in verse 20, it tells us that Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. Now, I had somebody ask me recently about this scripture and said, well, does that not mean that Eve was the mother of all the animals also? That she's the mother of all the living? And of course, that's not what that's referring to. That's referring to humankind. But the Hebrew word there for Eve is Strong's 2332, which is kava. It's causative from Hebrew 2331, life giver. Kava, or Eve, the first woman, Eve. So as I said, up to this point, Adam had called Eve woman, but now he gives her a name which means life giver. In Adam Clark's commentary, it says, a man who does not understand the original cannot possibly comprehend the reason of what is said here. What has the word Eve to do with being the mother of all living? Our translators often follow the Septuagint. It is a pity that they had not done so here, as the Septuagint translation is literal and correct. And Adam called his wife's name Life, because she was the mother of all the living. This is a proper and faithful representation of the Hebrew text for the chava of the original, which we have corrupted into Eve, a word destitute of all meaning. So when you think about it, when you hear the word or the name Eve, we think of Eve, the lady who gave in to the serpent, who caused the first sins and who brought separation between man and God. And so, but we don't think about the life part, which is what Eve means, life giver. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about women, because we do have Mother's Day tomorrow, and talk about the fact that women are the life givers of all of us. It's in their bodies that human life begins to grow after a man and woman know each other, as the Bible says. And it's there that today's society is attacking life. The world says that it's okay to end life because it isn't really life. Satan has once again deceived humankind, and we are destroying ourselves by destroying the lives of our unborn. That's where Satan is attacking. Destroying. If he can keep a life from being created, that's one child that he can try to keep out of God's kingdom, because it's destroyed from the giver of the life, which is the female, the woman. And so in today's society now, women believe that, they can go out and do what they want to do, and then when they have a child or become pregnant with a child, that it's okay and acceptable just to go out and end that, because it's not really a life. It's not really a child. It's just something. It's a part of your body that's growing. And until a certain point, it doesn't really become life. So our society is saying, it's kind of like a cyst, or it's kind of like an infection. Just go in, get rid of it. That's fine. It's acceptable. But yet, from the beginning, mothers are life givers, because they're women. They come from Eve, just like we all do. Eve was the first life giver, because she bore her sons. And they bore more children, and more children, and more children, until we have our population that we have today. But we can trace back to that moment. And so, even today, our mothers are the life givers in our world. And they carry precious life. Men can't do that. Men cannot give life. We can't carry a child. We have our part to play in it. We also have our part to play as fathers in it, but we're talking about mothers today. But it's the mother that carries that life in her, that life begins to grow. And then that mother gives birth to that child and begins to raise that child. That's the way things are supposed to go. But in today's society, that has changed. That's not the way people look at things now. They don't consider wives or women as life givers. They produce life, but they don't look at them necessarily as life givers. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, we're told to honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Again, you know that this is a commandment that has a promise in it. That if you honor your father and your mother, that your days will be long upon the land in which the Lord thy God giveth thee. In this day and time, I know several people who will not be on this world long because they do not honor their mother or their father. And that's what our society is becoming now. That people don't look at their mothers and their fathers with respect and honor them. Of course, some will say, well, yeah, but that's because they have brought it upon themselves. They've not been good parents. And that is somewhat true. As I was looking up, mothers caring about their young and taking care of their young when they're children and helping them to grow. And I was looking at animal mothers and how they care for their young. And here's some that I found as far as how long that they actually care for their offspring. A chimpanzee will care for its offspring for 4 to 5 years before leaving them on their own. Lions for about 3 years. Polar bears, 2 to 3 years. Birds until they can fly, and perhaps longer, a few weeks. Rabbits until the baby's eyes are opened. And then they go on their way and leave the small rabbits to take care of themselves. There are some animals in the animal kingdom, though, that absolutely do not care for their young at all. Snakes never care for their young. The spider typically dies before the birth of her young even occurs. Turtles leave their eggs on the beach and they hatch and are left to their own devices. Fish. There was one illustration I've seen here that a group of children were asked which animals didn't care for their children, and a little girl's response was fish. Because my fish ate her babies. And there are some fish who will. They will eat their own offspring. I found this one that I thought was interesting, and actually I can kind of see some of the similarities in it in today's society. It's a bird. It's called the cuckoo. The cuckoo leaves their eggs in another bird's nest to make the other bird take care of their chicks. Now when I read that, I thought, there's a lot of that going on in our society today. Women are having children and leaving the children to be taken care of by other people. I know a lot of children who basically their grandparents are the parents because the actual parents will have nothing to do with the children. They're out enjoying themselves and doing other things, so they don't have time for their children. So the grandparents step up and become the parents. That's kind of what this bird does. It just drops its young off, takes off and goes on, has a high old time, and leaves it for the other birds to take care of. We see that happening in our society today. When you look at a human mother, though, typically she spends her whole life looking after her children. A mother never really ever lets go of her children. When something's happening in their life, they worry about it. They look after them. Even when they're adults, they still will be the person that the children can go to and talk to them about things. This was some statistics that I found that the university had ran. By the time a child reaches 18, a mother has had to handle some extra 18,000 hours of child-generated work. In fact, women who never have children enjoy the equivalent of an extra 3 months a year in leisure time. How many kids do you have? Multiply that by 1,000 hours a year, and you will see how quickly caring for children becomes a full-time job. And it is. There's always been an old joke when you have a stay-at-home mother who takes care of kids and takes care of the home. And say, well, what do you do for a living? Oh, I stay at home. Oh. So you just sit around, eat bonbons, and watch soap operas. That's the idea a lot of people in the world have of women who stay at home. But yet, according to this, if they didn't have children to take care of, they would have 3 months of leisure living. And for every child they have, that increases the time that they don't have for themselves. They spend their time cleaning the house, taking care of clothes, feeding, watching over the children, taking care of the children, worrying about the children. What are they doing now? And having to punish children. It's a full-time job. Where I work at now, I'm over several men in a fire facility. And sometimes it's like being over children because of things that happen in the workplace. People bring some childish behavior sometimes and you have to deal with it. But I have a hard time imagining what it would be like to be a mother staying at home, being responsible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a child. I can see where it would be a hard thing to do. I can see why some people would feel like just throwing their hands up and quitting. But you see, a mother can't do that. A mother must take care of her children. I'm just going to go through real quick and just mention some mothers that are in the Bible. Again, these are some of the more popular ones, some that you will know and recognize. The mother of Moses. She cared so much for her son that she broke the law. She went against the ruling and took her son and put him in a basket and set him in a river to float down so that another person could find him and raise him. That was a mother giving up her child. How hard would that be? How hard would that be to hide in the bushes and watch your son float down this river, hoping that he floats over to where the princess is so that she can take the child out of the water? And you're sitting there and watch that, and you watch this other woman pick up your child, not knowing whether you will ever see that child again or not. How hard would that be for a mother to stand there and watch that? This being that she gave birth to, that she's cared for up until this time. Or what about the two women who went before King Solomon? The one who they both claimed that this child was theirs. And the king said, okay, fine. Then we'll split the child. And he pulls out a sword to split the child. The real mother, loving the child so much, don't want to see anything happen to him, says, no, it's her child, and gave her child away. Of course, King Solomon, we all know the story, was testing because he knew the real mother would step up because of the love she had for her child, that she would do anything that she had to do to save that child, and that includes giving the child up, which she did. We have the example of the mother of James and John, who loved her boys so much that she wanted them to sit by the Lord's side in God's kingdom. She was worried about how they were going to fare, where they were going to end up in God's kingdom. She was worried about their future. Some of you may not know about this mother, but she wrote one of probably the greatest scriptures about a woman that we have. The mother of King Lemuel, who gave advice to her son about godly living and how to pick a good wife in Proverbs 31. We often refer to the Proverbs 31 woman. This was a mother talking to her son, telling him how to find a good wife who would be a good mother. Of course, we have Mary, the mother of Jesus. Think about that burden. Think about knowing that you are the mother of the Son of God. Think about all the unknowns that Mary had. Mary didn't know everything that was going to go on with Christ. She just knew that that was God's son and she was raising him. And it was her son because she gave birth to him. But imagine knowing that in the back of your head that this is the Son of God. Paul writing to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5. Saying, when I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, I am persuaded that in thee also. So we can see here that there are many biblical women who were wonderful mothers, who gave life to their children, and they cared for them and raised them in the way of God. You see, it's an important aspect of being a mother. To raise your children in the ways of God. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Deuteronomy chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. And we'll go through verse 7. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1 through 7. Now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord your God commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land whither you go to possess it. That thou mightest fear the Lord thy God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command thee, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with thee, and that you may increase mightily, as the Lord God of thy fathers hath promised thee, in the land that floweth with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thy heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when they sittest in thy house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. Mothers give life to their children physically and spiritually. Physically through childbirth, and spiritually by teaching them the ways of God. Through this, mothers continue to give life to their children. Mothers are servants from the moment that child is born. They become the servants of that child. They take care of that child. They help provide for that child. They give that child what it needs. And part of that is a spiritual. That is teaching them God's way. When you're sitting around the house, who is it that's there? Most of the time, the father is out doing a job, working. It's the mother. And she shows those children God's ways by talking about God, by how she reacts to the things that she does, by showing them a servant attitude, which is what we strive for. We strive to have a servant attitude in God's church. That's what each one of us is supposed to have, is that servant attitude. Mothers are the example of that, because their time is consumed with taking care of their children. From the time that they wake up, to the feedings in the early morning hours, to the changing of diapers, to the taking to school, to picking up from school, to taking to soccer games, to bringing home from soccer games, basketball, softball, picnics, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, all the things and activities. The mothers tend to be the ones that have to schedule those things and take the children to and from those events. Their life is consumed in taking care of children. They give up all their personal time to take care of children. That is a servant. They sacrifice their own life to take care of their children, to make sure their children are happy, to make sure their children are healthy. They also provide teaching in God's ways in their home, by showing them what God's way is, by living it, by teaching it. I remember when I first started getting interested in religion, when I had questions, I would go to my mother and I would ask her questions. And it was her that gave me the answers. At the time, I didn't realize what she was telling me was so much different from what the rest of the world believed, because I thought it was just normal. I didn't look at my mom and think she was weird. She was normal. Well, for the most part. All parents are a little weird when you're a child. Of course, when you become an adult, then you realize it's the children that are actually the weirdos and not the parents. But a mother is an example of a servant. And that's what she does. The sad thing today is that not every female who has a child is a mother. You see, just like I've talked about in the past, when you use the word Christian and you throw it around, that word means something. A Christian is a title of someone who follows God's way. Everybody who claims to be Christian is not a Christian. Just because you have a child does not make you a mother. A mother has responsibilities. A mother is not self-absorbed. But in today's society, when you look around, what do we see? More and more women who have had children who are more worried about themselves than they are their children. I just went to the Times News, local newspaper. just over the last few weeks. These are some of the articles that I found. A woman who allegedly admitted to shooting morphine in a liquor store parking lot with her 8-month-old child present Thursday afternoon was charged with DUI. Here is a lady who has a child in her car, and she's shooting up drugs in front of that child, driving around high with that child, endangering that child. Is that lady a mother? I would say no, because she has not thought anything about that child. She's thought about her own needs, her own wants and desires, not what the child needs. Another one. A Hawkins County grandmother is facing charges including assault on an officer after she allegedly dug her nails into a deputy's arm so deep they drew blood while the deputy was attempting to arrest her. Around 8:30 p.m. Wednesday, Hawkins County Sheriff's Office Deputy Wes Seals was dispatched to 247 Guntown Road near Rogersville on a complaint of a domestic dispute involving 4 generations of a family. Alice Oakford told Seals that her mother-in-law, Nellie Oakford, 48, of that address was holding Alicia's 4-year-old son during a verbal dispute and would not let the child go, which caused the dispute. And when the police arrived to break it up, they told her that they were going to have to arrest her because she had attacked her own daughter in front of her grandchild. And then when the police officer went to arrest her, she attacks the police officer in front of the grandchild. Where is the concern of the child? See, they called her a grandmother. I would not even call her a grandmother. She was a person who had relations or was related to a child. But she was not a mother. Not to her own daughter and not to the grandchild. Because again, she was not concerned about that child. Whatever was going on, it really doesn't matter. Whatever was going on was more important to her than what that child was seeing. Their family fighting, hurting each other. That is not the way a mother should be. A Tennessee bill that punishes women who give birth to drug-addicted babies was signed into law Tuesday by Governor Bill Haslam. In 2013, there were 124 babies born with NAS, which is neonatal abstinence syndrome, in northeast Tennessee, with 84 of those babies born in Sullivan County. Sullivan County had the 5th highest number of NAS births in the entire state of Tennessee. During that year, northeast Tennessee overall was the 2nd highest number of NAS babies in the state, only behind the entire eastern side of the state. That's local. Imagine nationwide. Are these women mothers? There are females who get pregnant and could care less about the life that they're carrying. They don't even think about it being life because that's what society is telling them. That's not life. That's just a growth. So why would they care? They don't think of it as a child. They just think of it as, oops, whoever the man was that they were with. Oops. It's a growth. And they continue on partying, they continue on drinking, they continue on using drugs, and they think nothing about the life that grows within them because they are not a mother. From the moment that child is conceived, a mother begins to think about that life. A mother will change her lifestyle, if need be, to protect the life that grows within her. There are mothers who smoke. And when they become pregnant, they will quit smoking because they know it can hurt the baby. They will quit drinking because they know drinking will hurt the baby. They will make those lifestyle changes because of that life that they carry. Those are mothers. When you read stories like this, and there's many of them, there's been several just in our local area, I'm amazed. Because I grew up in this area. You didn't see these kind of things. You didn't see the stuff that I read now in the newspaper. Maybe in the big cities you would hear something every now and then. But it is now in our community where these children have grown up and they haven't been taught what a mother is. Maybe because their own mothers were not mothers. They were just a woman who had them. And as the generations continue, these children that are being raised without a mother will have children. And they will raise them because they're not a mother, because they never had a mother to show them what being a mother was really like. And they hear the world saying, it's a growth. It's not really life. It's okay, you can get rid of it. Even up to when you're about to be birthed, you can get rid of it. That was legal. I'm not going to go off on a sermon on abortion. You all know about abortion. But that's what our society is doing. It's teaching our young ladies that it's okay to take life. You have an oops, it's okay, discard it. And many are. And when you have that kind of thinking, well, maybe I'm from a family who's a little bit religious. Maybe I'm from a family that has a little bit of God in their lives. And I know that abortion is wrong. But still I'm bombarded all the time with, it's not a life, it's a growth. It's a thing. It's an it. It's not a life. That changes how you think about it. So you don't think about the fact you need to change your life because of this life that you have growing in you. You just think, oh, well, I guess they'll be popping out in 9 months. And they continue on doing what they do. And then they have the child. And because they've already been living that way, not thinking about the child, they continue not thinking about the child. And they continue doing what it is they want to do. Doesn't matter if it hurts the child. That's the child's problem. That's how people view it now. We have children being raised in homes where parents don't care about the children. They know they're their children. They know they got to leave them in the house or the police will show up and they'll arrest them because they kicked them outside or something, so they at least got to do that. But I'm sure you've read some of the same stories I have where police officers have ended up going to a house for some reason. They find out that the children are living in filth. Feces all over the house. Children crawling around in it. Playing in it. Because people don't care. Those are not mothers. They have no right to utter that title because mother is a title. And it means something. And we need to remember that, and we need to bring that back to people to let them understand, no, a mother is someone who cares about her children. She is a life giver. She brings life to those children through taking care of them. But as I said, also because she teaches them about God's ways, she brings them life that way. Do you realize as we lose our mothers, we lose our servant attitudes in the church? As we lose our servant attitudes, we lose God's way of life. And as we lose God's way of life, we lose our lives. Because we don't have it. These things are interconnected. It's not a philosophy. It's not an idea. It's a fact. Mothers are essential to our lives because they instill those values in their children's lives. As they raise them, as they love them, they show them what sacrifice means. No, we as children, we don't realize that. We don't understand that. We don't realize the sacrifice they make until we become older. And we get in a relationship. And we have children. And then we see the sacrifices that our parents made. That's when it really hits us. That's when we find ourselves making that comment. If you fall out of that tree and break your both legs, don't be come running to me. And we realize, that was my mom. That just came out. That's when you realize the sacrifices that your mother really made. Do you know that there will be people who grow up and who will never ever make any of those statements because they never had a mother? All they know is it's this female person who screams a lot and does what she wants to do and leaves you in a house alone. Goes off and has her fun, shoots up drugs, gets drunk, lets you play wherever, whatever, doesn't care, leaves you in your mess, never cleans it up, never cleans the house, leaves it in filth. And you were raised that way. What do you think will happen to those children when they raise up and they have children? It continues. There are cycles, and it does continue. And our society is causing it to continue on because society is saying, it's not really life, don't worry about it. You have a right to your life. There's no reason why you have to give up your life. That's why you have women who are working out in the workplace who look at the women who are staying at home and raising children. Oh, well, you've wasted your life. It's those who have been out and forsaken their children that have wasted their life. They have wasted their motherhood rather than being there to take care of children. And again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm coming down on women who have had to work. Some women do have to go out and some women do have to find a job. And some women are true mothers that they can do a job and they can still raise their children the right way. They exist. It can be done. But sadly, those are the weirdos. Those are the oddballs. Those are not the norms. More and more you see parents who are just letting their children do whatever they want to and they're not raising them. And it comes in and it affects the church. Yes, when people come into the church, they have to be given a chance to grow and grow spiritually. And as they grow spiritually, they learn the things that they're supposed to be doing that they haven't been doing. And that goes for women also. There are women who come into the church that maybe haven't been the mothers that they should have been because they didn't realize and understand. But unless we talk about it, unless we let them know that yes, there are things that the Bible says and things that mothers ought to do, that they have a place and a role to play. There's women who come into the church and their only interest is, well, how do I get up there in the pulpit? Because I got a lot to say. They don't even understand the value of what the gift is that God has given them because they are life givers. And they do not understand that. They want to be seen. Again, it's about them. They're self-absorbed. They are not servants. Mothers are servants. They give their life to their children. And when they do that, you have servants in the church because they've learned from their mothers to serve. And that's what we're here for. We're servants of God, and we're here to serve. That begins with our raising and with our mothers. Tomorrow, we honor women who are our mothers. We praise you mothers who take it serious to make a spiritual impact in the lives of your children. Proverbs 31 verse 28 says, her children arise and call her blessed. You don't have a lot of children today who look at their mothers and say she's blessed. They curse their mothers. But a Proverbs 31 woman is a mother that her children arise and call her blessed. Verse 30, a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Mothers are women that are blessed, and they are women who deserve our praise. So today, I would like to say thank you to all the mothers out there. Thank you for being the life givers. Thank you for the physical life, and thank you for the spiritual life you have given to each of God's children. May you be beacons of light to the world and to the younger women in the world, that they may also one day be givers of life and servants of God. We praise you and say to you, mothers, you are blessed, and may you each have a happy Mother's Day.